Subject: My wife asked for an open marriage and regretted it immediately. Hey, true story, Dom here. Well, technically Dominic, but I've been Dom since high school, so let's stick with that. I stumbled across your channel a couple weeks ago after my buddy sent me a link to one of your videos, and I've been hooked ever since. Honestly, listening to other guys tell their stories made me realize I'm not some isolated case. There's a weird comfort in hearing other people went through the same kind of betrayal and madness, so I figured it's my turn to throw my story into the ring. This all starts a little over 4 years ago, but if I'm going to do this right, I've got to take you back to the exact moment I met my ex-wife. And believe it or not, it was at a volunteer day. So, my company does these community outreach events a couple times a year, and they'll send out an email asking for volunteers. That particular year, they partnered with a local nonprofit to organize a day of fun for underprivileged kids in one of the rougher neighborhoods in our city. I signed up because, honestly, it sounded better than sitting in the office all day pushing papers. Plus, I've always liked working with kids. So I show up at this little park in the middle of the neighborhood, and there are maybe 40 volunteers. Some were from my company, some from other local businesses. That's when I first saw her, my future wife. She wasn't with my group. She was there through some other company, wearing one of those neon event t-shirts and standing by the snack station. I remember thinking she had one of those approachable faces, the kind that makes you think, yeah, I could talk to her without making it awkward. We ended up working near each other when it came time to hand out supplies to the kids. She had this energy about her, laughing with the kids, making conversation with me in between tasks. Before long, we were basically shadowing each other all day. Then things got interesting. The gang situation. Midway through the day, I noticed a group of guys hanging out across the street, watching us. They weren't part of the event, and from the way they were dressed and the way they were eyeing us, I got a bad feeling. A couple of them started walking over, and I remember thinking, here we go. They came right up to one of the organizers and started saying we couldn't just roll into their neighborhood without paying, like it was some sort of tax for breathing their air. I wasn't scared for myself. I've been around enough to know how to handle myself, but the kids were there, and I didn't want them seeing something escalate. My now ex was standing right next to me, and she quietly grabbed onto my arm. I could feel her hand shaking. I'll admit, that made something in me kick in. Protective instinct, whatever you want to call it. I stepped in and told the guys we were just here for the kids, not to cause any problems. They kept pushing, talking about respect and donations, until one of the other volunteers slipped away and called the police. When the cops finally showed up, the group scattered. No punches thrown, thankfully. My ex looked at me afterward and said, I'm glad you were here. And I'll be honest, that's the moment I knew I was going to ask her out. Dating and marriage. We started dating shortly after. It wasn't some whirlwind crazy thing. It was slow, steady, consistent. She was thoughtful, family-oriented, and had this way of making even boring errands feel fun. We dated for a year before I proposed. Nothing flashy, just the two of us at a quiet restaurant. She cried, said yes, and hugged me like I'd just told her she'd won the lottery. We were engaged for another year, saving up for a small wedding. The day itself was perfect, intimate, nothing over the top. If you had asked me back then what my future looked like, I'd have told you. Marriage. Maybe a kid or two. Growing old together. Fast forward to about 2 years into our marriage, and I thought everything was great. We talked about starting a family. We were paying off debts, planning vacations. There weren't any screaming matches, no cheating that I knew of, nothing. I thought I was living the dream, the open marriage bomb. Then one night she drops it on me. We're sitting on the couch watching TV when she pauses the show and says, "Can I ask you something?" Kind of out there? That's never a good sign. She starts talking about how some couples have open marriages and how it can strengthen the bond and bring new excitement. She'd been reading articles and hearing stories from people she knew. Basically, she laid it out like a sales pitch. My gut reaction was absolutely not, but instead of shutting it down immediately, I told her I needed to think about it. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe I didn't want to be the boring husband who always says no. After a few days of stewing on it, I did something I still can't fully explain. I woke her up at 2 a.m. and told her, yeah, let's try it. I guess I figured she was going to do whatever she wanted anyway, and maybe if I agreed, I could control the damage. Dumb logic, but hindsight's 20/20th. The night out. The next day, I called one of my buddies and told him everything. He just laughed and said, man, you're about to open Pandora's box. Then he offered to take me out to his favorite bar to test the waters. That night, we're shooting pool, having a good time, when these two women walk up and start talking to us. The one who started flirting with me was drop-dead gorgeous, the kind of woman you'd expect to see in a commercial, not hanging out in a dive bar. One drink led to another, and next thing I know, the girls are inviting us over to their place for a bonfire. Long story short, I ended up sleeping with her that night. No guilt, no hesitation. The next morning, she cooked breakfast for all of us. We sat around drinking coffee, talking like we'd known each other for years. I liked her, more than I expected to. The fallout. While I was there, I put my phone on her charger. The second it turned on, it blew up with texts, missed calls, voicemails, all from my wife. On the ride home, I finally called her. She answered mid-scream, crying, demanding to know where I'd been. My friend just looked at me and said, tell her the truth. So I did. She went silent for a second, then said, we need to close this open marriage. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I just told her no. I like the woman I met. That's when she lost it. When I got home, it turned into a screaming match. She accused me of trying to replace her, demanded the other woman's number so she could set her straight. I refused. Finally, I said, how about we just divorce? That's when she screamed, please don't replace me. It was pathetic, really. She wanted the freedom without the consequences. Moving on. I packed some stuff and moved in with my friend that night. Within a week, I filed for divorce. She tried to backpedal, begged me to work it out, said she made a mistake. But the truth was, once I'd been with someone else, I realized I didn't love her anymore. The respect was gone. I've been divorced for a while now, and I'm honestly in a better place. I'll send you a part 2 with all the details about how she tried to worm her way back into my life after the divorce and how I shut that down for good. For now, just know this. If your spouse ever asks for an open marriage, what they're really saying is, I want to cheat, but I don't want to feel guilty about it. She tried everything to come back after I left. Hey, true story. Dom here again. I told you I'd be back with the part 2, and here we are. If you read my first email, you know the backstory. Wife asks for an open marriage. I stupidly say yes. I go out once, meet a woman, and end up doing the very thing my wife supposedly wanted us both to explore. Then she freaks out because it turns out she only wanted her side open. Typical. I left, filed for divorce, and honestly thought that was the end of it. You know how they say some people only realize what they had once it's gone? That was my ex times 10. And I'll be real with you. The way she tried to crawl back into my life was equal parts sad, infuriating, and in some twisted way, entertaining. The silent week. After I filed for divorce, I went full no contact. Moved in with my buddy, blocked her on social media, muted her number so I didn't even see when she tried to call. That first week was quiet, too quiet. I figured she was either stewing in her own mess or talking to friends about how awful I was for taking her up on her own idea. Then, out of nowhere, she broke the silence. I was at work when I got a text from a random number. It just said, I miss you. Can we talk? I knew it was her. She'd clearly gotten a new number to get around my block. I didn't respond. That was day one of what I now call Operation Get Dom Back, the pop-in. A few days later, I get home from work and there's a car I recognize parked outside my buddy's house. You guessed it, hers. She's leaning against the hood, arms crossed, looking like she's about to lecture a teenager. Dom, we can't just throw everything away over one mistake, she says before I even make it up the driveway. I told her, you didn't make a mistake. You made a decision. Big difference. She started crying right there, saying she didn't even do anything yet, that she was just curious about the open marriage idea. I laughed, couldn't help it. I told her she should have been curious before we got married, not 2 years in. When I wouldn't invite her in, she asked if we could at least get coffee sometime. I told her no, got in my car, and left until she was gone. The mutual friends angle. Next came the mutual friends. People we'd hung out with as couples started reaching out, saying she'd been talking about how heartbroken she was and how she still loved me. One buddy even said she'd been trying to fish for details about the woman I'd met. Like she thought if she could dig up some dirt, I'd drop her. I told every friend the same thing. Don't be her messenger. If she wants to talk to me, she can talk to my lawyer. That shut most of them up real quick. The accidental meetings. A month into the divorce process, she started showing up at places she knew I liked to go. The grocery store, the park where I run, even the bar where I first met the other woman. It was too consistent to be coincidence. Once, she even brought a mutual friend with her, probably thinking it would be less obvious. I just nodded at them and kept walking. Inside, I was boiling. You want space, you give space. You don't stalk your way back into someone's life. The gift drop. This was the weirdest one. I come home one evening and there's a bag on the porch. Inside, my favorite snacks, a hoodie I'd left at our old place, and a handwritten note that said, "For when you think of me." No thanks. I dropped the whole thing in the trash. If you want to be out of my life, be all the way out. The last-ditch plea. 2 weeks before the divorce finalized, she called me from yet another new number. This time I picked up. Her opening line? "Dom, I've been doing a lot of thinking." I cut her off. "Let me guess, you made a mistake. You want to start over. You think we can work through this." She was quiet for a second, then said, "Please don't replace me. I'll do anything." That line, "Please don't replace me," was almost word for word what she said the night I told her I liked the other woman. It just confirmed what I already knew. She didn't care about me. She cared about not being replaced. I told her, "You replaced yourself when you asked for an open marriage." Then I hung up. Moving forward. Once the divorce was finalized, it felt like someone had taken a 100-pound weight off my shoulders. I got my own place, small, but mine. I started hitting the gym more, eating better, and focusing on work. The woman I'd met that first night didn't turn into some long-term relationship, but it wasn't because she did anything wrong. She was great, honestly. We just weren't in the same place in life. But she was the wake-up call I needed to realize my marriage had been running on autopilot for a long time. I also reconnected with some old friends I hadn't seen much during my marriage. It's funny how some relationships get neglected when you're in the wrong relationship. Now my social circle is solid again. The social media explosion. Here's the kicker. After the divorce, my ex went on this bizarre social media spree. She started posting these cryptic quotes about betrayal and people who move on too fast. One post literally said, "Some men can't handle a strong woman exploring her desires." My phone lit up with screenshots from friends asking, "Is this about you?" I just laughed. If that's the story she needs to tell herself to sleep at night, let her. What I learned. The biggest thing I learned through all of this is that people will often show you who they are when they think they've got options. My ex thought she could dangle this open marriage idea and still keep me as her safety net. She didn't think I'd ever actually find someone else, and certainly not so quickly. But the second I did, she went into panic mode. Not because she loved me, but because she lost control. Life now. Today, I'm in a completely different headspace. I'm not in a rush to get married again. I date casually, focus on my career, and make time for the things I enjoy. I don't hate my ex. In fact, I hope she figures herself out. But I'll never let her, or anyone like her, back into my life. Once the trust is gone, it's gone for good. If you're reading this and your spouse asks for an open marriage, hear me when I say this. It's not about exploration or freedom or spicing things up. It's about them wanting to have their cake and eat it too. And the second you agree, you hand them the fork. Thanks for letting me get this out. True story. Writing this all down feels like closing the book for good. You lied about me to everyone, and I set the record straight. Hey, true story. Dom here again. The guy from the wife wanted an open marriage, regretted it instantly. Saga. You'd think after part 2, her popping up everywhere, trying to weasel her way back into my life, she would have gotten the hint, but nope. Apparently, when she realized she wasn't getting me back, she decided to try a different tactic. Burn my reputation to the ground. I didn't find out all at once. It started like most of these things do. Little hints from different people until you finally connect the dots and realize, oh, she's been running her mouth everywhere. And the kicker? She wasn't just saying I cheated on her, which is already hilarious given the context. She was also saying I emotionally abused her. In some versions of her story, I was borderline violent. Let's rewind and go through this mess from the top. How I found out. It was a Thursday night. I was out at my usual bar, the one my buddy took me to the night I met the other woman. I'm shooting pool with a couple friends when this guy I vaguely know, Brad, comes up to me. He's got that look like he wants to say something, but isn't sure if he should. Finally, he goes, "Hey man, I gotta ask you something. Did you really hit your ex?" I actually laughed. I thought he was joking. "What? No. Where'd you even hear that?" He says, "She was in here last weekend telling a bunch of people you cheated on her and that you used to get physical when you were angry. Said that's why she asked for an open marriage, because she was scared to leave." My jaw just about hit the floor. First of all, that's her cover story. She's rewriting history like a Netflix drama. Second, I've never so much as slammed a door in anger at her. We had arguments, sure, but abuse? Never. That was the moment I knew I had a problem. The pattern emerges. Over the next 2 weeks, I started getting texts from people I hadn't talked to in months. Some were mutual friends. Some were people from my gym, even an old coworker. Every single one had some variation of, "Hey, I heard some stuff about you. Is it true? Your ex is telling people you were abusive? Are you okay? She's saying you cheated on her and broke her heart." At first, I tried to brush it off. People who knew me, really knew me, wouldn't believe that garbage. But then I realized something important. Lies spread faster than the truth, especially when the liar is acting like the victim. I couldn't just ignore it. First stop, mutual friends. I decided my first move had to be with our mutual friends. These were the people most likely to believe her if I stayed quiet. I texted 3 of them at once. "We need to talk, in person." We met up at a coffee shop. They looked awkward as hell when I walked in. One of them, Rachel, finally said, "Dom." She told us some pretty serious stuff. If it's not true, you should know she's making you look bad. I laid it all out for them. The open marriage was her idea. She didn't expect me to actually go through with it. The night I met someone else, she panicked. When I wouldn't shut it down, she flipped the script. Then I said the line I'd been sitting on for days. If I was so dangerous, why was she trying to get back with me for months after I left? That landed. They exchanged looks. By the time we finished talking, all 3 said they believed me. Rachel even admitted she'd been suspicious because my ex's stories kept changing depending on who she was talking to. Second stop, my gym. I've been going to the same gym for years, so the last thing I needed was people whispering about me between sets. I pulled the manager aside, a guy I've known since high school, and told him straight up, "You might have heard some stuff about me lately. It's not true. My ex is saying I was abusive and cheated. The real story is she asked for an open marriage and didn't like what happened next." He laughed, shook his head, and said, "Figures. She came in here the other day looking for you, said she was trying to warn people. We had a good talk, and he promised to shut down any gossip he heard. I left that day feeling like I'd at least plugged one hole in the dam." Third stop, work contacts. This one made my blood boil. A former coworker messaged me out of the blue. "Hey, just a heads up. Your ex has been talking to people in the industry, says you're toxic, and that she left for her own safety." That crossed a line. Work is off limits. You start messing with my ability to earn a living, you're playing with fire. I called up everyone I still had contact with in my field and told them exactly what was going on. I kept it professional, didn't rant, didn't insult her, just laid out the facts and told them I had nothing to hide. Not only did they believe me, but a couple even said they'd suspected she was lying because of how dramatic and over the top her version of events was. The face-to-face confrontation. Eventually, I decided to confront her directly, not because I thought she'd suddenly admit she was lying, but because I wanted her to know I was on to her. I caught her outside a grocery store. She looked shocked to see me. I said, "I know what you've been telling people. I've talked to them. They know the truth now. Keep my name out of your mouth." She tried to play innocent. "Dom, I was just telling my side of the story." I laughed. "Your side of the story doesn't get to include fake abuse charges. That's not your perspective. That's a lie." She stammered something about how I hurt her emotionally, and maybe she exaggerated. I told her that was the last warning she'd get. Next time I'd take it to a lawyer, clearing the rest. Over the next month, I made it a point to talk to anyone I heard had been fed her version. Not in a desperate, please believe me way, more in a calm, matter-of-fact way. I figured the more consistent and composed I was, the more credible I'd be. I even reached out to Brad, the guy who first told me about the rumors, and thanked him. He ended up helping me spread the real story to a lot of the regulars at the bar. Slowly, the tide turned. People stopped giving me side eye. Some even apologized for believing her at first. The funny part is, her lies ended up hurting her more than me. Once people realized she'd made up the abuse thing, they started wondering what else she'd lied about. A couple of our old mutual friends cut her off completely. Last I heard, she's still telling a watered-down version of her story to new people. But the folks who matter already know the truth. What I learned, again. This whole thing just reinforced what I said in part 2. People like my ex care more about control than truth. When they lose control, they'll say anything to get it back, even if it means destroying your reputation. The key is to stay calm, stay consistent, and handle it head on. Lies fall apart when the truth is louder. That's the latest true story. I think this might really be the last chapter in the saga, unless she pulls some new stunt down the line. But for now, my name's cleared, my life's peaceful, and she's just a cautionary tale in my rearview mirror.